So we may start. So welcome to Climate Emergency Committee. Thank you for coming out on this rather wet day. Although yesterday I think was a sign of things to come. The spring on its way from last, which has got to be a good thing. Okay, so we haven't got any members of the public present unless anyone wants to speak as a member of the public. So as we know, this meeting is recorded, so there's a video up there that's recording what's going on, and then that gets uploaded onto our Parish Council YouTube channel afterwards. So aside from that, does anyone want to record? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, apologies and reasons for absence. We had a flurry of emails just before the meeting tonight with various people who couldn't attend. So we've had apologies from. Do you want to? Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Davies, Councillor Gould, Francis Bennett, Caroline Anstey, Councillor Bustard, Catherine Halloran, Alison Morgan, and Andrew Colwood.
Okay. Right, so we'll read those apologies. I've got like a voting end and a non-voting end. It's weird. Okay. Right, that's approved. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 57. So members and officers' personal and disclosable pecuniary interest and items on the agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to flag up on the agenda that they've got interested in? Yeah, no?
Yes, item 212274, school, it's a personal interest on the government.
Okay. Thank you. Item 74.
That's the school, is it?
Yes.
Okay, anyone else got any? I assume you don't have any, Jen? Okay, any written requests from you, DPIs?
None to report.
No? Okay, thank you. Any items on the agenda to be discussed in private session? I couldn't see any. Anyone else have anything? Okay, so minutes of the previous meeting, it's obviously quite a while ago, 18th October, and they were actually approved at full council, so it's really just to note that those are the minutes, and obviously it was useful for attendees to refresh their memories of what was discussed at that meeting.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
Is that always the case that they will get approved at full council, or will they sometimes be approved here?
It depends on the timing of full
Okay.
council, basically. So if full council
Or before?
happens before the next meeting, then full council sort of either notes or approves meeting minutes.
Thank you.
That's correct, isn't
Yeah.
it? Okay. So it's consider any applications for members of the public to become members of the committee, because we've got one space, but obviously there's no one here. Has anyone made no contact?
No contact made.
Okay. So we'll move on from that. Okay, so the next items are budgetary items. So there is a document C in your pack, which is has got the current budget. So I'll stand in, so I'm just going to get it up on the screen. Right. Okay, so obviously this has got the rest of the budget leading up to the end of next month, March tomorrow. So we've still got quite a lot of budget remaining, but it's worth bearing in mind that we effectively full council fired some of our money to allow us to then earmark it to spend next year. So that was on the energy audit recommendation. So that's sort of detailed at the bottom. So we'd advised that we wanted to give £10,000 to Homley and £10,000 to Homeforth Civic, Homley Library and Homeforth Civic. And the best way to do that was to make use of the monies that we still had and put it in the budget as an earmarked reserve, so that it could be drawn down on the following year. So has anyone got any queries or questions? Anything there? Sorry, Matt? Yeah.
Do we have a specific timeline that they have to have spent the money by, otherwise we lose it, even though we've given it to them to spend on this particular thing?
Well, effectively, because it will go, well, that's a question. I suppose once it becomes in the budget for next year, then it will be expected to be spent during that year. But if there was some reason at the end of the year that they could justify why they haven't been able to do that, we could then ask full council to earmark it again for the following year. So I suppose if it's in a budget line and it doesn't get spent, it just goes into the general reserves.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was asking the
That's
question.
right. But that's partly why we earmarked it, so that it was specially identified. But that's not to say that it just trundles on for the next up to years if it's not spent. The expectation is that it's spent either in the Home First Civics case, possibly this month, in fact, or for Honley some point over the next year. And we've also asked them to provide us with quotes as well, so that it's not just a kind of here's £10,000, do what you like with it. It is bring us quotes of the things that you're going to do, which again should help inform. Obviously, we've got an item to discuss this specifically, but it should help inform our understanding of how much actually the costs reflect what was in the audit report, because I think we probably all expect some of the costs would have gone up. But of course, they've gone the other way, who knows?
Can I ask Richard, the money for this year, which presumably ends end of March, has that actually got to be, is that cash out, or is it actually merely committed? Are you committed to spend it, or is it actually got to be spent in terms of cash?
It's got
And anything that isn't spent just goes back into general reserves.
Yeah, but you're using spent not to mean a liability, but to mean actual an expenditure of money in that sense.
Does it have to be purchase order, or can it be an invoice? Does it have to be invoiced?
I think, I can double check that, but I think it's as long as we've got the invoice, and then, because there's still work to be done on finishing up in April.
Yeah.
Do you want me to double check on that with the deputy clerk, and then email out
Yeah,
an
that's
answer?
quite useful, because there's quite a difference sometimes when the cash going out and actually having an invoice or a commitment or a liability for something.
Made the case of the civic, or hopefully they'll commit over this
yeah.
year, but we'll get it done before the end of March.
Yeah, true.
You wouldn't want to lose it, would you? Because
No.
just by a matter of a few weeks or
But I think again for the civic we've done it
Have
in
we-
such a way that it will,
it will go over.
if it's not spent, that amount is remaining will then go into the earmark reserve for the Home First Civic. So we've kind of set it up with that in mind because we were conscious that that might happen. But I think we will clarify with our financial as to what at what point the spend has to happen. Because there'll be rules over the government spending. Be useful to clarify. Okay, so the next item, unless anyone's got anything other than just to note perhaps that that was the spending that we've had from this year. I mean, I think it's fair to say at the beginning of the year, I think there was sort of some bold kind of, right, let's just put big chunks of money into the different categories, and then obviously as the years evolved, we've clearly focused in on a few things like trying to deliver the energy audit recommendations. And the main cost, or one of the significant costs, if you like, is the whole community mobilisation, which is obviously in part having someone working for us, which is clearly always going to be a substantial commitment in order to make this happen. So,
Let me make a comment on that, because when, I know when the first budget was set up, it was actually allocated on the basis of its the need for carbon reductions within the Home Valley. That's why 80% of the money basically was into the budgets for energy and transport.
Yeah.
And the rest, that's why other things like, for example, waste and recycling, others are quite small, and land and things, because they were having a smaller impact. Is that something that you intend to sort of carry on in the longer term? Because it's obviously more difficult to spend some of the projects than it is some projects are easy to find projects for, but they actually, in terms of the carbon reduction, actually have a less significant impact. But in the light of yours and trying to raise awareness, maybe some things which actually have a lesser carbon impact, but actually have a greater awareness of climate change, might be more fruitful, let me say, for the parish council to think about.
That kind of fits with what Councillor Hopkins put in that very long email, that we're going to look for the low-hanging fruit stuff that makes more impact.
Well, if we sort of part of that for the minute, we'll come to it when we're talking about sort of the priorities for the next year, or proposed priorities. So if we move on to the next item, which is looking at the budget for this year coming. So effectively we've got a budget of 36,000, which is because we've got these earmarked reserves as well. So effectively we've managed to retain a very similar budget to what we had this year in terms of the commitment of the council to climate emergency activities, which I think is a really good thing. So I don't know if anyone's got any queries about that, but we still, I mean, at the moment, we've still got the titles as they originally were in the budget, which was sort of, obviously from a financial point of view, it's easier if you retain the same titles all the time and you can see where your monies are. But in reality, we can move things around those budget headings. So I don't think we need to be too kind of stuck on the fact that if there's not enough, or if there appears to be less money in one budget, then that means we can't spend it on another budget. They're more of an administrative reason. It's good to have things with categories. So I suppose, does anyone have any queries about that, or things they'd like to raise apart from when we get on to a discussion about looking forward as to how we all focus on things? Okay, right, we'll move on then. Okay, so item 64, so our final kind of financial one, which is about Home for Folk Festival project costs. So this is, I'll read out what it says on the agenda, so everyone's the same thing. So the Climate Emergency Committee is working with organisers of Home for Folk Festival who are keen to make the festival as green as possible. This will include the work of the committee and HVCAP being featured in promotional material. So Michelle is planning to work with HVCAP to have a stall or cinema giving children the opportunity to plant seeds in a yoghurt pot that can take it home. Space is also being made in the hot edible garden for people to plant. And it's anticipated that a contingency budget of £190 is needed to cover the costs of signage, growing food in the home valley, compost and seeds. So do you want to add anything, Michelle?
I think it's quite self-explanatory really. Yeah, HVCAP wanted to do something. HVCAP has absolutely no money. So, and originally they came to me asking to produce banners and brochures, and I said, we've got stuff, we don't really need to go and do something else. But then when we worked out that the budget's about £190 to do these, like getting, because I said, have you got a budget for season? And they're like, well, we could have, I went, let's just make sure we have, otherwise the event's going to be a bit of a washout. So that was me saying, what are people going to come for? We can plant something in hot edible so people can come by and see it.
Yeah.
You know, if you plant something, you can go and watch it grow kind of thing. And then the because the other option is take home. Not everyone's going to have somewhere to plant something. So. And then they've got a massive, well they call it a tent, but it's like a garage, it's a massive area. So it's the wasteland between, is it Linley Scott or whatever it's called now? Linley Simpson and the garden. Yeah, it's going to be there. I have to, that's one of the things I have to find out because it's owned by Kirk Cleese, if we can go and use that bit of land actually. That's one of the things I need to. It's not long
chained
enough.
off, but it's used to be proper. Okay, so and in terms of actually, I can't remember what the date is of the boat festival.
Not the 5th of March. I'm going to keep it up, can't remember off the top of my head now. But it's a Saturday, I know that much, but we're going to do it.
Okay. So are you, so is there, so obviously there's this garage tent,
Yeah.
Are members of HVCAP manning it?
Yes,
Are you
and
manning it
no,
as well?
no,
Right.
because this is basically their idea, but
Yeah.
they need us involved, and of course I want to be part of it anyway,
Yeah.
on behalf of us. But no, they're manning it, they've got lots of their people coming along. Well, hot edible people are really going to be the main source of managing. If anybody else wants to come along, great, but I think they've got enough people, they say. So, it's Peter Van Ruyten, I want to say.
Oh, yeah. So are they able to make use of any of our materials? that
They will
we
be, yeah.
Right. So there will be visibility that it's sort of being done with,
Well, basically we're using all of our stuff, so it's our banner
yeah.
and everything. So yeah, it will be very visible that it's us.
Since mobile data turned off.
I think the suggestion is that it could be like a bit of a green day, like Michelle organised last time, because I think Eco Homes were intending to have a, come along and some banners up and things, just an opportunity to have a bit of an outreach. And
Yeah.
I'll suggest that any other community organisations in the, under the umbrella of the
Well,
should come along as well, so.
It's not going to be a green day, but yes, to that point, because we realised when we did the green day that that's why we're doing it with the folk festival, i.e. there's an event happening and then we plug onto it. It's the 7th of May.
Okay.
But yes, we will, I don't know how much space, we haven't looked into the logistics of it yet, but the idea is to promote Home Valley climate action and anything that's relevant to that there. And I think there'll be enough space for eco homes as well.
Do you know off the top of your head if that's when they're doing the parade? They normally do a parade of dancers, don't they, down the road?
Yeah,
Is it normally on Saturday?
yeah, it's usually the Saturday.
Yeah.
But I've no idea.
No, I just think that's really good if it is on the Saturday, because that's a real draw.
Yeah,
And lots of people are then experience the pedestrianisation of the town as well, which is fantastic.
and
To see that.
Alex Bywater that runs it, I've been writing copy with him, including images and stuff. That's all to do with if it's not far, leave the car, and trying to tie into that to get people to walk in and things like that. But yes, to your point, John, we will be reaching out to other organisations because there'll be
Well, it's
space.
an opportunity for lots of people coming in,
Yeah.
you know, to engage with them, isn't it? You know, to take every opportunity we can.
But as I said to HVCAT when they said we're going to do it, you've got to have something interesting, not a load of people on stalls talking at you. So that's where the growth thing comes in.
Yes.
We should have the e-pick bike by that weekend as well, so I'm sure Kim would want to bring it
Oh, that's
out and
true.
we can make a feature of it, and that will draw attention, yeah.
That would be great.
We'd maybe cycle it round the town a bit.
Yeah,
Mm.
great idea.
Right.
You could carry some bells on.
Absolutely,
It
yeah.
could be folk dance.
But what it can go around with is some of the fruit and veg on the back of it and say go
Absolutely.
over to here to get some more. So yeah,
So who's paying?
not I.
Another job.
Andy, can't it? King's like,
Otherwise-
oh, yeah.
It could be Kim Warren.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is it worth, Michelle, you just contacting Kim, just to see if you could just suggest that?
I will be doing all of that once
Right, okay.
there's like, cause we literally just was getting the, can we do it,
Okay,
and everything, but yeah, I'm going to be having another meeting with HVCAT about that, so yes, of course.
okay, fabulous. So the proposal is that commit £190 from budget line, environment strategy or from budget line, community mobilisation to cover costs up to £190. Does it matter which one we do?
I've discussed it with Rich today and we're going to suggest 4825 environment strategy.
Okay. That suits finances then. Anyone want to propose that? Yeah. Okay. Second it? Okay. All those in favour? Sorry, right hand side of the room. Thank you. Super. Also, it'd be interesting to get feedback afterwards as to how it's worked, both from anyone who's at the Folk Festival that weekend, not away, to see whether there is much of a, how the footfall is around the stand. And actually that's, I think it's a much more visible place as well.
Yeah, and we'll also be trying to capture people to be on the mailing list so that we can start doing stuff like that as well.
Okay, good. might be something that we want to explore replicating in one of the other festivals later in the year, perhaps.
It's a minor point, but if we do have a store there, whether we can find out where people come from. That's one of the things that we did at the Motorsport Festival.
Yeah.
Because if you're finding out about the footprints of any event, transport to it is usually one of these things. So we just ask people, how did they get there?
Yeah.
Car foot, how far? And even during our 20 people, it gives you some guide.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Good idea. Okay, right. So we will move on to the next item, if that's okay, which is sort of derived from the well, Michelle Palmer described it in a very long email. It was I didn't mean to clog up your inboxes, which is why I sort of attached it as a separate download document as well, because when I started putting it together, I realised how much material I wanted to capture. But I mean, effectively, what I did in the paper that I shared with everybody was having had discussions with some members of the committee, councils, and Michelle, just sort of thinking about how we can best really make an impact with this committee. So I was conscious it's easy to get kind of sucked into wanting to try and do loads of things and not being able to achieve much in each of them because you spread yourself too thinly, but also sometimes it's easy to get sucked into thinking you can influence things which are basically beyond the home valley, which yes we can individually, and yes there is sometimes room for that, but actually to my mind it's about what can we do within the valley and what levers can we pull and what influence can we have. So as it says here, I've proposed the committee focuses on what can best be controlled and influenced actually within the home valley. So there are plenty of issues of concern around climate change, which many of us will have, share and have different views on solutions to them, but it's about, well, how can we encourage more people so that we're not just talking to the same people who are already wanting to take action on climate emergency, but actually trying to encourage the people who are either not knowledgeable about it or just busy with their daily lives, frankly. And it's about trying to get, to my mind, it's about getting more people to make a small difference rather than just get, sort of have what could be described as sort of zealots and then everyone sort of left behind going, well, I couldn't possibly do that. I'm not going to never fly and I'm not going to never get in my car, but actually I could make some small changes to my life, and I think that's where we hopefully can start making an influence. So as I stated here, rather than solely preaching to the converted, I want to try and inspire people to take small steps, because I think in the end that's the only way we're all going to make progress as a society, really. So I suggested that there were sort of 3 areas that we would be doing. One of it was about education and inspiring, and I think that's why I'll come on to the next item in a minute, which is engaging with local schools. And then there's encouraging and supporting change, and some of that is things like the database, which hopefully can bring people together and you can inspire people by hearing of what other people have done and think, oh, maybe I could try that, or it's not as difficult as I thought it might be. And then also the coordination and enabling, and that's things like the fact that by doing the energy audit of our assets and then hopefully being able to demonstrate what difference that's made and being able to then share those lessons, we then inspire other people to be able to take those steps themselves. So that's kind of the logic behind what I put together, and then sort of thinking about the different projects we were working on. So on that sort of general framework, if you like, does anyone want to raise anything or challenge it or support it all before we move on to the individual sections?
I totally support it.
Okay, that's
I'd support it certainly. I think there are that many things that you could do. We've a very limited resource, haven't we? There's only a small group of us. We don't need that often. There's a whole lot of other things to do. We really have to focus on the things that are going to make a difference. Much as we'd like to do lots of other things, you know, it's wherever we make a difference.
Can we comment with this? I agree. I very much support this awareness and these campaigns, you know, that we're doing. I think there's definitely a place for those, and it's where we should put a lot of the money. I also think there's a place though for some serious discussion and awareness raising about what's actually happening in terms of carbon reduction. You know, one of the questions that has been asked, and I remember Councillor Gould asked it, you know, is what have we actually achieved? What are we doing? And we're coming at it in one sense at two ends of the spectrum. One is from the bottom end, which is the bottom-up approach, which is all these small things. We get people mobilised to those, and they'll be more aware of the bigger things that are going to come in terms of maybe more prepared to accept them. But I still think we have a responsibility and an opportunity to actually put out there what is really happening. And this current debate, the current report is showing that we're making very little progress. I think there's a space, and I wanted to ask the committee whether they thought there was an opportunity for like a workshop or something, maybe in the spring sometime, maybe in the summer, where we actually either, you know, do things like, for example, look at what we've actually achieved, look at our carbon plan, look at what we've actually achieved, and we'll see that we've actually achieved not a lot, and a lot of what we have to achieve as an area, as well as a country, is actually centrally driven. You know, if you look at the carbon plan that we've got, you know, fundamentally to get to carbon neutral by 2030, we've got to double the number of trees we've planted in the whole of Kirklees, in the country, 9% up to 20%. We've got to decarbonise all our homes very significantly, reduce the energy consumption in a very significant part of our homes, which is very challenging. And we've got to have remove 95% of the fossil fuel cars in our area. And you know, these are real challenges for us. And we're all doing small things at the moment, but I think there's an opportunity for like a workshop or a discussion which says, this is where we've got to go to. Maybe it's 10 years off, whatever. Some people say it's a lot longer, but you know, but at the same time, this is what we've done, and we can say what we've actually think we've got here in terms of what's happening to energy, to carbon in our area, because of the way we did the carbon plan in the first place, which was really a top-down approach. It looked at national figures, it applied those almost like on a per capita basis to the individuals within or across our area, and it adjusted in the fact that if you look at transport, for example, in this, our car ownership in the home area is about 87%. It's much higher than the 70% of the early 70s for Kirklees and for nationally, and it's because we are a rural community. We need cars more, we travel more in our cars, but we're also more affluent, so we have more cars per capita. You know, the car ownership per household is higher here. So we've got some figures, and I think we should be being out there, and the people who want to think about it, we should be giving them the opportunity to sort of have a serious debate. You know, it's a bit more than just doing a bit more recycling. It's a bit more than actually, you know, maybe not having your log fire or not saving, you know, or growing a few vegetables. It's a bit more than that actually in reality. So I think we should be addressing both things. One is the campaigns, you know, and you know, like the transport campaign we've got at the moment. You know, it's not far, leave the car. Great, and more of those, because they get people thinking. But I think we should also be raising the bigger issues and coming out with some hard-hitting facts about what's happening. And if this country doesn't do anything, it will be. You know, these reports that we're producing now, you know, that they just produce will just get blacker and blacker and gloomier and gloomier. So it's a suggestion that perhaps an event to look at that, as well as these other campaigns and the more specific sort of projects which get people thinking.
Okay, thanks, John.
With the IPCC today, we're on red alert. I feel as though our parish council is very, you know, we're trying our best, but really we should be, I was really impressed that Burton Parish Council wanted to start making some contact with us, but I feel as though every council, little council that surrounds Kirklees, I don't know how many there are, Rachel, what does it, do you know?
There's about 5 parish.
Okay, and what about, is Meltham a parish council or a? Okay, parish council and town council, so is there like a dozen that surround Kirklees? Has anybody got any?
No, there's 5 or 6.
Okay,
Most
right.
areas don't have a parish or a town council.
Okay, right. If there's 5 or 6, then we need to be working together and actually putting pressure on the main council in Kirklees. We don't just want to be working in isolation. This is like something major that we need to be dealing with, and we all need to be. We've got our electronic computers, so we can make contact with all these different parishes and town councils, but we really need to really start spreading it out and getting other people involved, not just a small group here.
I just want to strongly support John's suggestion. I think we need to know how far we've travelled, and we may not have travelled very far. In which case, that should be a wake-up call. Because I think one of the things that's missing is a sense of an emergency. I think we've lost the urgency. I mean, that's inevitable, really, isn't it? Because we've had to deal with other terrible things. But I think some really hard thinking about what's been achieved. But I also think that this group should be an enabling group rather than anything else. We cannot do it. I mean, there are a lot of people out there in the whole valley who are very interested in these issues and have time to do it. We need, and we do use our budget intelligently, which I think is what we're doing. But I think we need, and I think that enabling and mobilisation is really probably the most important thing that this committee should be doing.
I would just question though, in terms of how far we've come. I think the sensitivity of the calculations that we would do is not fine enough to be able to show any difference that we've made, because I think we probably all agree that we haven't done that much so far. And to get the starting point, you have to take a fairly broad brush approach. So it's probably very similar to where we started 2 or 3 years ago.
If you go on the website, we did some work last year, and actually Michelle has put it up on the website, and there's a chart there which shows the S-curve, and it shows you where we are. And this is calculated based on our original carbon plan, and it's based on this data, so we can do something.
Is it less than 1%? So far,
Yes, I think it's what 8% in 3 years, something like that. So, but it's got a steep part to come. But
so is that what we have achieved or what the plan was?
it's what we have assessed we've achieved. But when you look at why, that's the interesting thing. Is that it's actually because of things like it covered it covered the COVID year. And in COVID, we all realise, transport dropped dramatically. And that's the renewable energy. It was the energy sector that made the biggest improvements by far. But for transport, a lot of things, even despite COVID, a lot of it went up. There's more white van men people going around and people like that. So we have got the data. You can look at it. But I think it's worth, to me, a serious discussion. I don't want us to brush it under the carpet in the sense of saying, because there is an argument that climate change debate is actually, don't make it too difficult for people because we don't want to put people off. But you've got to do 2 things. You've got to, one hand, encourage them to do it. At the same time, you've got to tell them as it is. When I'm dying, I don't want to be told by somebody that I'll be all right in the night. And that's the danger. You see, you've got to. And there's people who really want to listen. There's people out there who want to listen. It might not be your average person, but we can cater for both. The ones who really want to listen and they might actually take on and do something, and then those who just need to be coaxed into doing something. I'm just saying there's a place for both there. It's not an either or. I think that's my sort of real point on this.
And I don't think it's going to scare the horses that much, because virtually every other day on the radio and the television, we are being informed with quite hard-nosed science that we're not meeting our targets for the planet. And it was announced today again to say we're well off the mark, and we shouldn't be optimistic.
I think that what I was just comment there though, is the challenge is we can, we can say how big the challenge is, that's fine, but people need to have solutions. People need to see a positive way in which they can actually
I'm
make
not, I'm not
change.
dismissing that as
And I
well.
think that's
And this
a
is
really
what-
important
yes.
message, and it might be, and I think there is something to say that measuring reduction in carbon is always going to be challenging, and in reality, COVID was, did cause a dip, and transport use has gone back up again, but people are living more normal lives than they were for the previous 2 years, and I think most people will say, well, hang on, I want to be able to go on holiday abroad now that I can, rather than then say, well, because we all experience lower carbon, therefore we should, the way to achieve that is for a constrained ability to be mobile. So I think it's about giving people realistic choices of other options, and actually things like the escalating fuel prices, hideous though they are, does start making more of an argument that actually everything you can do to insulate your house and that sort of thing actually has a bigger impact. And I think Michelle was putting together facts and things.
Yeah, it's coming up in that I think there is a place for both, but the whole point of it is I am the resource. As much as there's the rest of you, I'm the only paid member of staff that's committed to doing this. So we have to be wise in what I do and to make the most impact on the most people in the valley. So I think there's a place for your debate, but to Rachel's point before, that is going back to preaching to the converted, because those are those people that will come along and have a nice chat. I'm being disingenuous when I say that, but to talk about it, that's not going to make things happen. Whereas if we can get 20 people from a school to go out and tell their mum and dad that they want to change something, that will physically make a difference. So we've got to do both sides of it. And one of the issues we said was spending too much money on the big things meant a small change. Whereas if we could get 10,000 people to put less water in their kettle, and that's the kind of thing that Rachel and I were saying, that's easy, I can get that, and that's the kind of thing that we're looking at, to try and get quantity of small changes to make the big change altogether. And to your point, Councillor Sheard, we are getting people coming all the time, and that's the idea of the website, where we've got sharing information. And so Kurt Burton came to us, and I actually went and spoke at Kurt Burton Parish Council. I've spoken at other parish councils. I've been on courses with other councils, and we're all sharing information. So that's kind of happening. It might not be in the way you want us all en masse to go to the government and make things happen, but we are all talking to each other to say, if we all do the same thing together, then it will make a difference.
Yeah, I think there's a range of stop and think moments and gestures, and what was on the news today could be on our website as a part, as part of this. Just lodge fact, information about what's there in the broader society as well as in our location.
Again, I'm one resource. I've got enough stuff to do for the home valley. That sort of stuff could probably go on our social media pages, which is
yes,
good.
that's a good idea.
But it is just me. So we have to remember that. So if you see something in the news, this isn't happening at the moment, by the way. It is just me. Sarah has sent me occasional things, but your things are really quite out there sometimes. That if I shared them with people, they wouldn't, Whereas if all of you can start sending me things to go, can you put this on? Can you put that on?
Good point.
Rather than me having every day to try and find the content, that's a really positive thing that you guys can help me with.
Okay, but that sounds like something we need to make a note of. Obviously conscious quite a few members weren't able to attend today. I think that is an important thing, that people share key information that they think would be useful to share through our social media. And I think the challenge again is, the people who are looking at our website, people who are looking at social media are already engaged. And it's about then broadening the number of people who are looking at our social media and looking at that information. Matthew, and then Sarah?
A couple of things. Sarah was saying about how we share with other Kirklees councils, that sort of thing, that would be lovely to do. The other thing is, there's obviously the Kirklees Climate Commission, so I'm on the buildings group of that. So some of the things which we're wanting to do about insulating buildings is going to be like that stage. There's also Zero Carbon Yorkshire, so if there's good things happening, if there's a project which can be copied, fantastic. Zero Carbon Yorkshire have some funding which is trying to share good practice between community groups. So there's Zero Carbon Headingley, there's lots of these, not many of them are council run, they're more like HOT, you know, which are a non-council green group. And some of those have got some good things happening. So there are opportunities through that which will be lovely to use. And just as a minor ray of maybe good hope, the UK housing strategy, there was the House Commons Committee put out a report about housing saying how lousy it is, and the government has got 3 months to respond. But I actually had a very good seminar from the Irish lot, so the Irish retrofit is very, very good. We're trying through Institute Britain to get the UK government to learn about Ireland. Ireland are doing a huge number of houses, they've got good standards, they've got a carbon tax, they are miles ahead. So there are ways of doing it as well, which obviously for the parish council, that's not in our remit, but
yeah, useful to be aware of. And I think that's where, well, we'll come to the database in detail shortly, but I think that one of the intentions of having more of a database and being able to talk to more, particularly businesses and community groups across the valley, is actually championing some of the stuff that is already going on. And lots of us know of different things going on in different parts of the valley already, but the more you talk about it, the more we can flag it up and say, and you know, there's no reason they can't be paired together with the hard-hitting fact that says, you know, we're yes, exactly. That's what I said with you, but I don't want to be so later. You know, there's a huge challenge ahead, and this is only making a small difference, but it is making a difference. And you know, solar panels going up on a football club, I can't remember which one it is now, Pepper, I think. You know, there's lots of different things happening, and if we can inspire by sharing, I think that's a really powerful thing to do. And that's something where, because the parish council has sort of fingers in all the wards of the parish, if you like, it should be able to spread more information. It's not always as easy as you think it is to communicate, as we all know, but theoretically at least, there should be that breadth of spread. Yes.
I found it very hard to penetrate the website of Kirklees Council. I don't know whether anybody else, it doesn't seem very accessible. I mean, are they working for a carbon tax, the town council? Surely we should be putting pressure on those that do have the power, which is Kirklees Council, to lobby them to have a carbon tax.
When you say we, who do you mean?
Well, surely that's our responsibility as this climate.
Well, when you say we, physically, which person is going to be appointed to do it is what I'm saying.
I'm whoever feels keen enough to, you know, have a rant with them and say, come on, yeah, anybody could.
I think that the challenge is, because effectively what it's saying, we need to lobby for various things. And I think the challenge with lobbying is that, in general, it then has to be driven forward by the parish council as a whole, rather than just this committee, and then it gets bogged down in the fact that it takes such a long time to get to the right committees to do the lobbying. And actually, I don't think that's necessarily the most constructive way to do it. It's better to make use of the influence of people who are, say, on this committee, like me and Matthew talking about the Zero Yorkshire and the Kirklees Climate Commission. And I'm assuming, say, through the Green Party, for example, there's Andrew Cooper as Green Councillor, he's part of Kirklees. It's about influencing our local Kirklees councillors and saying how important it is. But I think this committee should focus on things we can actually do, rather than just trying to push people to do other things. Because ultimately, we haven't got the funds to go and insulate everybody's house. We haven't got the funds to set up electric car charging points everywhere so that everybody can have an electric car. It's not, you know, those are levers we can't pull. We can say they're important, but I'm not sure people will necessarily, that will make a huge amount of difference to Kirklees.
And in that vein, a lot of time has been spent, for instance, Capital Halloran trying to get bike rails up, and then it's just like, you just go against the bureaucracy that you have to do, and that's a lot of energy spent with no achievement at the end of it. So I think we need to really think about what can we do.
Okay, good. Mary, and then we'll move on to some details. That's all right.
So I
It's a useful discussion.
yeah, I mean, I've been on this committee very long, so I just, but am I right in perceiving that the suggestion here, it represents a kind of a change of direction by this committee from perhaps more delivery to the three objectives that've been identified? I mean, I think the three objectives are really logical and greatly support them. I think it's a good way of having a logical structure through which the committee can work.
Well, I think it's because the original headings all reflected the basically action plan that was designed in the first place, of which, to be fair, we'll take full the things within it. But some of the things, say waste strategy, for example, is one where I know we've had discussions about trying to influence Kirklees and how they do their waste management. But personally, I don't feel there's a lot of value in this committee spending a long time discussing that, because it's a decision made by Kirklees. We can all influence it individually, like responding to consultations and things, and we can obviously there's been and we can highlight the importance of recycling and waste management or whatever. But it's not something that I feel we should spend lots of time focusing on, because it's not something we have a lever to pull. So this is trying to focus us back on what are the things with which we can use our money to actually try and affect people within the home valley as well. Because the other danger is, and I know this is, this is what some of the councillors on the council have an issue with, really. They say we're trying to do in this committee sometimes what they think Kirklees should be doing. And we're too busy talking about what Kirklees should be doing rather than making a difference for the people of the home valley. So again, I'm trying to reflect that sort of pressure from within the council, which is a fair challenge, because ultimately we raise money to spend it locally. So we should be spending the money, which even in just having this meeting costs money for the parish council, on choosing to do things that really make a difference in our community. So that's very fine.
Okay,
I'm
sorry, but I still think if all the parish councils and town councils got together collectively to put pressure on Kirklees Council, then something would be done. You'd have to listen to.
And what I was saying is, go ahead, organise it, and I'll help you to find out who the council people are you need to speak to, and then you can go ahead and get them all right. Because I'm telling you now, it's a very tough task.
Yeah, I can imagine, but I just think.
I think the other challenge will be, what is the thing that we want Kirklees to do? I think people want solutions. They don't want to be told there's a big crisis and we're all going to die. They want to know what to do about it. People want to know what can I do about it, and I think that's a reasonable challenge for anything. And similarly for other councils to be in the same situation, so it needs something that can go to Kirklees saying you should do this, which will cause that to happen. Right, we will move on, if that's all right. That was a really useful discussion, because it's really good to hear views.
Thank you for airing my chin.
So I mean, as I say, the paper was trying to sort of encourage this kind of discussion rather than us sort of working through the things that we've always been looking at before. But then it sort of led on to, I've structured the agenda, within the steer from this, onto specific activities that I think we're taking forward. So the first one is the Jubilee Seed and Tree Project. So basically this is for the Platinum Jubilee, which we're in the Platinum Jubilee year. Parish Council has committed money to a project, and I'm pleased to say that rather than bookmarks or mugs, which I understand is what we've done in the past for Jubilees, we've managed to encourage the idea of having wildflower seeds instead, that every primary school pupil in the valley would receive some, and there'd be an opportunity to plant a tree in each of the primary and secondary schools. That's the overall intention to mark Jubilee, and I've subsequently established this can all become part of the Queen's Green Canopy. Not the Green Queen's Canopy. Anyway, there is I've forgotten what it was. I'm sure there was an email address that I put on a website. There's a Queen's Jubilee Canopy, anyway, which is all about planting trees across the country. opportunity is therefore that not only the trees are obviously at each of the primary schools and secondary schools, but also apparently there could be a digital map that you can get on trees put on, so you can see how many more trees are being planted in the valley as part of that. But the intention is
Queen's Green Tree Canopy.
brilliant. Thank you.
So that's it.
The Queen's Green Tree Canopy. Or the Queen's Green Canopy. There you go.
Queen's Green.
There you go.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought I'd
You might well have done that.
included the website. Yeah, so the intention is with this is that, a bit like we were talking about, let's try and influence more people, raise awareness across the valley through the school